Like and subscribe right now, or this spider will crawl in your face while you're sleeping. When it comes to mythical creatures, we can safely say that the ancient Greeks are to blame for this one. They were fascinated by folklore and mythological monsters, but modern-day scientists believe that their madness over these beasts was driven more by imagination than actual science. However, it is not just the Greeks who were so fond of these unsettling creatures. Every culture around the planet has had its fair share of monsters that they told stories about, generation after generation. But doesn't it make you wonder, what if these are more than just stories? What if the creatures described throughout the centuries actually exist and have managed to stay hidden? Let's discover a few of those creatures that may exist or have existed on our planet. Do let us know in the comments below if you know of any mythological creature that might be real. Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that will take just 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell and you get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it. It really works.
Unacceptable.
Number 10. The Minotaur. The legend of the Minotaur begins with the sacrifice of 14 Athenian children. They are all sent into a labyrinth in Crete to wander for days through the dark stone halls and feel their way along the indecipherable paths. With every step, they know that they are inching closer and closer to the Minotaur. The myth goes that the people of Athens would draw lots to decide who would be sacrificed in the labyrinth. The king of Crete had demanded a sacrifice from Athenians as retribution for the death of his son at their hands. And those unlucky boys and girls were the ones who had to pay the price. The Minotaur, according to Greek legend, was the blasphemous offspring of the Queen of Crete and a bull. The Minotaur's real name was Astrion, but he was never allowed a normal life, because King Minos of Crete was ashamed of what his wife had done. He had also worried about the violent rage that lived inside of the beast, and so had him locked inside of a labyrinth to survive only on the human sacrifices he was sent. Number 9. Nian. There was no greater horror in the villages of ancient China than that one day a year when the Nian would come down from the mountains looking for food. Nothing could stop it. The Nian was immortal, no weapons could hurt it, and no amount of time would make it go away. All the people of ancient China could do was board up their windows, lock their doors, hide under their beds, and pray it would leave them alive. The townspeople would have to watch from their hiding spaces as the monster moved through their lives. It had a flat face shaped something like a lion's, with 2 huge horns on its head and a set of razor-sharp teeth that jut out of its mouth. It was huge, bigger than an elephant or any creature that walks on the earth. If they were lucky, it would break through their stores of grain and eat every ounce of food they'd saved. But if they were not lucky, then the Nian would spot one of them and pounce. It would gore them with its horns and tear through their bodies with its sharp teeth and devour them piece by piece. Anyone could be its victim. To this day, the people of China light off fireworks, bang drums, and cover their cities in red every spring festival. According to the legend, it's this celebration alone that keeps mythological creatures from ravaging their homes. But if the people ever lose sight of their traditions and stop their celebrations, then perhaps the Nian will return. Number 8. Chimera. From the right angle, a chimera might look, if only for a second, like nothing more than a lion. But then it would turn, and you would see for all that it really was, with a goat's head that jutted out from the middle of its body like a bulbous, toxic growth. The tail, too, would whip out. It was green and shimmered under the light, and you would see that it was covered in scales. At the tip would be 2 sharp yellow eyes above a slithering tongue that hissed. Venom would drip out of its mouth. This was the chimera, a mad conglomeration of beasts fused into a single body. Each beast protruded out of its own end and writhed for life. According to Greek myths, the chimera was the twisted offspring of a monstrous snake named Typhon and his half-human bride. Before the Greeks started telling stories of their chimera, the Hittites were already telling stories about a chimera-like beast that had a woman's head in place of the goat and wore a pair of eagle's wings. Number 7. Basilisk. The basilisk was a mythological creature so venomous that its mere glance could kill. Even if you waited until it was gone, the basilisk left a trail of poison everywhere it went. No man, the Roman writer Pliny the Elder wrote, could kill it. If he stabbed it with a spear, the poison would drip down onto its weapon and end his life. A 5-year-old girl vanished from her home in Warsaw in 1587. She had been out playing with a little friend, and when she didn't come home, her mother and their maid tore through town in search of them. They had found the girls in the underground cellar of an abandoned house that had been in ruins for 30 years. They were lying at the bottom of the steps, both of their little bodies stiff and still. The girl's mother stayed at the top of the stairs while the maid descended the old, rickety steps down into the darkness. But before she reached the bottom, the maid suddenly stopped. She froze completely, petrified where she stood. They would in town later say that she was frozen because she had stared into the eyes of a basilisk, the beast that kills with a single glance. Number 6. Kalupalik. The Inuit children of the Arctic knew never to get too close to the water's edge, because there, beneath the ice, Kalupalik lay waiting for them. The first thing the Inuit children were told was that they would hear when the Kalupalik was near, as there would be an eerie, distant hum of its song under the sea. But if the Kalupalik was too eager to contain itself, then it would gently tap its fingers on the ice under their feet. Kalupalik would only be seen for a flash of an instant before it was gone. It would leap out from under the water. Its long, sharp fingernails would allegedly sink into the victim's flesh and drag them forward. Its victim would get one quick, brief glance at its face, which was somewhat of a woman's, which had turned green and bloated from decomposing under the sea. The Kalupalik would then jam its victim into the great pouch it wore on its back and dive back down into the sea. Number 5. Groot Slang. According to a South African legend, the great and terrible Groot Slang was one of the first creatures the gods ever made. When man was nothing more than primordial ooze waiting to be formed, the gods create a massive, powerful serpent, larger than an elephant and smarter than any man. It was a mistake. The gods were new to the art of creating life, and they didn't yet understand the dangers of making something as powerful as this great snake that could coil its body around any creature and crush the life out of it in seconds. They tried to correct it. The gods tried to exterminate every Groot Slang that lived. They split the powers of the Groot Slang and dispersed them across 2 species, the elephant and the snake. But one Groot Slang managed to escape. She became the mother of a whole species of mythological creatures that the gods themselves called a deadly error. Today, the best known Groot Slang, it's said, hides in a cave in Richtersveld in South Africa. There, it lies in wait for anyone foolish enough to stumble in its domain, and passes its time by luring in elephants, crushing them and swallowing them whole, making this one of history's most terrifying mythological creatures. Number 4. Hydra. As horrifying as the many-headed mythological Hydra could be, most would never live long enough to even see it. Every drop of blood coursing through its body was filled with so much venom that it breathed poison. A noxious air filled its lair, and anybody who inhaled it would fill their lungs with an acid that ate them from the inside out. Should anyone make it through the deadly air in the lair, they then would find themselves staring into the eyes of an enormous dragon-like creature with 9 heads. No matter what anyone did, the Hydra could never be killed. If anyone managed to remove one of the mythological creature's heads, 2 more would grow in its place. The only way to prevent regrowth of a head was to sear it with the flame, but even then its final head was completely immortal. The Hydra could never die. Slaughtering the Hydra was the second trial of Hercules. He had his nephew Iolaus join him, using a firebrand to cauterize its severed necks and keep them from growing back. When all that was left was its original, immortal head, he used a magical sword gifted to him by the goddess Athena to chop it off. Number 3. Wendigo. A group of Jesuit missionaries in 1661 went to the land of the Algonquins, a tribe of Native Americans that lived along the forest regions of the Ottawa River. A group of the Jesuits had already traveled to the land of the Algonquins, but had fallen strangely ill. The Jesuits, coming to replace and support their sickened brethren, had heard that things had gone wrong at the mission, but what they had found when they got there was worse than they could ever have imagined. The missionaries they had come to replace had turned into cannibals. It was unimaginable to the brothers in Christ, but the Algonquin tribe knew this horror all too well. Wendigos were said to be man-eating monsters that roamed the land of the Great Lakes. Their bodies were emaciated, their ribs stuck out through their thin, pale skin, and their eyes were sunken deep down into their sockets. They looked like men who had died of starvation, walking through the world after a week of decomposing in the grave. A Wendigo's appetite could never be filled. It would attack other men and eat their flesh, but every bite would just make them larger and hungrier, until they were massive, flesh-starved giants towering over the trees. Number 2. Pulgasari. North Korea has immortalized Pulgasari as the star of their greatest propaganda film. Under the orders of Kim Jong-il, their government kidnapped 2 Korean directors to make the film, a Godzilla-like monster movie with a communist message. In the original legend, Pulgasari, or Bulgasari, was created by a Buddhist monk. When an evil governor ordered every Buddhist monk to be sent to prison, he hid in his sister's wall closet. To pass the time in hiding, he made a little creature out of stained rice grains. To his shock, it came to life. And seeing it hungry, the kindly monk fed it the only thing he could find: steel needles. Legends say the monster kept devouring steel until he grew bigger than buildings and started terrorizing the city. The governor sent his army, but nothing could kill the beast, and it kept on its rampage until it destroyed the city. Where did it go after that? Nobody knows. Number 1. The Kraken. In the 18th century, the Norwegian bishop Erik Pontoppidan insisted that the Kraken was no myth. The fishermen of Norway had seen it firsthand countless times, usually on hot summer days. Our fishermen usually affirmed they would row out several miles. Pontoppidan said that the Kraken is at the bottom of the sea. Kraken, the largest, most ferocious creature in the sea. Surfaced, a Kraken would stretch out as far as 10 warships side by side. It had great tentacles that could pull a ship and its crew into a watery grave. And even if it let you be, its massive size would create such a large whirlpool when it dove down below that it could suck a whole fleet underwater. There is documentation of this terrifying mythological creature haunting the seas since the 13th century. The Viking hero Ovar Adr of Iceland, it is said, mistook one as an island and was nearly swallowed whole. The Kraken ranks number 1 amongst those mythological creatures that had stuck with us and excited our imagination for centuries, and even made a name for itself on the movie screen.